Hey peeps, I want to talk to you a little bit about my childhood and about the people in my life during that time. I think that it's really interesting, and I find it interesting. Some of the people that were in my life and where they've gone to these days, and kind of who they are, right? Who they were. So I've got some that, at least one that's passed away. Now, when I was young, I lived in a place called Shandon in Colombia, and it was very much a suburban area of Colombia. And Shandon is known for older homes, and we really enjoyed kind of going biking through this area and enjoying the area very much. It was a lot of oak trees that you could see lining the streets. We used to ride in the streets all the time, play in the streets. It was not a problem then. You didn't have cars driving at high speeds down our streets at that point. People were pretty respectful of children being in the street. I would say not so much now. I wouldn't tell my child to go out into the street. Of course, my children are all grown, but my grandbaby, for instance, I would not. Bree, do not go and play in the street. Okay, just asking you, please don't. All right, so, but back then we could play in the streets, and often did, and we would roam the neighborhood. There was a group of about 6 or 7 kids who played together. There was Betsy, and there was Cece, and there was Bill, and Bill was my best friend for a long time, and then Adam. And Adam is a great guy. I still keep in touch with him even now. And there were different people who kind of came and went in the group based on them moving in. I knew one little boy who constantly acted like Popeye. That was his thing, right? He was always speaking in the Popeye voice, which got to be a little irritating after a while, but he was a nice guy. So we all lived in this neighborhood for years, and I still keep in touch with a lot of the people that I was friends with then. And one of our favorite things to do was to go to the neighborhood park, or to go to the middle school that was just down the block from us and play baseball. And I think I mentioned this in another video, that we played baseball a lot. We also rode bikes a lot. This was well before cell phones. Cell phones weren't even, I don't think about, were thought about at that point. The most technological thing we had at the time was a record player or a Walkman, right? I think that was as technologically driven as we were at the time. So, but you have to remember, this was during the 60s, during the late 60s, early 70s, and we didn't have that technology to play with. And in fact, when I grew up, we were watching black and white TV. And it was only later in the 60s that we actually got a color TV. And I grew up in a neighborhood where people just enjoyed being with one another. Seems like today we have problems connecting with the people around us because we're so involved in technology. And while being involved in technology is not a bad thing in and of itself, when it interferes with your ability to enjoy personal connections with people, then it becomes a problem, right? So we want to watch out for our time on, video like this, right? Not that I'm saying turn this off and go out and ride a bike, but if you're a young person, please turn this off and go out and ride a bike, right? If you're an old guy like me, well, okay, keep watching. Quiet dog. But anyway, we enjoyed the camaraderie, and one of these YouTube videos actually was seen by a friend that I hadn't heard from in a while, and he contacted me, and we're probably going to get together when he's in Colombia and visit. But it was interesting because he hadn't thought about me in a long time, and I hadn't thought about him in a long time. But it's like we can talk about what we did. Like, for instance, when I used to go over and visit with him, and they had a garage with what essentially was an apartment above the garage. It was a room above the garage, and so it was just a junk room. And so what we did was we spent a weekend or so cleaning it up, and we cleaned it up, and then we put some chairs and a table up there and started playing Risk in this. And so we made it kind of our clubhouse, as it were. And John, he's kind of a cool guy. He that was his house and his parents, and they made their own yogurt. I remember that. I remember that they used to make their own yogurt. And that was really cool, right? Cool stuff. His father was very strong-willed, as I remember. But I think they were kind of old hippies, really. They weren't old hippies at the time, right? I mean, it wasn't far off from being, in the 70s, they were middle-aged hippies, right? So anyway, and then Adam was in a family of musicians, really, really talented people. He spent years playing the recorder and the clarinet, and really talented. Lived in New York and worked there for a long time as a musician. And it's hard to make a living as a musician, right? So I remember him telling me that there was actually a time where he was getting unemployment, and he was kind of proud of that, right? Because in New York, when you're a musician, if you make enough money during the year to actually get unemployment, that's kind of a badge of courage, right? That's a kind of a big thing, right? So yeah, he was making enough money to get unemployment. He's kind of proud of that. And there was one girl that I knew growing up, and her whole family, they lived right down the street from us, and her name is Cece, and she's passed away last year. And I was sorry to see her go. We had our differences, but she was a really, really nice girl. Grew up to be a good woman, very, very concerned about other people in the neighborhood or in our city. And I think that most of the people who I grew up with have spent their lives creating new families. And that's really been my focus, was making sure my family was well taken care of, and that they have what they need, and we try to make sure that everyone is happy and or at least they are taken care of, right? So to that end, my daughter and son-in-law, my son-in-law had a wreck recently, and it really wasn't his fault, but his car was totaled, and they didn't want to get another. That cars cost so much. Used cars cost so much money now. It's crazy. But we had bought one like a year ago, and I told him, I said, I'm not driving. I work from home, so it was like, I'm not driving this. So, why don't you take it and you drive it? And then they decided they wanted to buy it, and we decided we'd sell it to them. Because I wanted them, I know that he needed a vehicle, and so I wanted to make sure that he had what he needed to get to work and to be able to do his job and everything. So it's always been about doing what's right for the family and making sure that my children, my wife, my wife's parents, everybody's, taken care of. Now, I must admit, I don't go over and visit with my wife's parents as often as I probably should, very seldom now. But that one of the reasons for that is my father-in-law has a lot of political opinions, and we don't get along. And so on those political opinions. And so I don't want to risk him having a heart attack over something stupid like having political discussions. So I tend to stay away to avoid that. And the other thing is, and this, is kind of an issue, is that they're both kind of hoarders. They have a lot of stuff in their house. And they're always a little, concerned about that, about coming over and seeing all that. But, it shouldn't make a difference, but I guess it does. They're both really nice people. I mean, they have their faux pas. We all do. But hush, dog. But at the end of the day, I don't want to upset them, and so that's why I don't go visit them a lot. But I do make sure that my wife goes over there every couple of weeks to visit and have some time with them to make sure that she's having some time with her family. And I just think family is super important. And I would say that my job was really important, but the closer I get to retirement, the less I'm really interested in my job, right? I mean, I still enjoy what I do, but I'm trying to transition my thought pattern to what will I do when I'm no longer doing what I do. I'm a software engineer by trade. I've been doing it for about 30 years. And I enjoy what I do, but at some point I'm going to have to stop and do something else. And I'm hoping that YouTube is what I do, the else that I do, right? Besides work. So we're hoping to do some traveling and that sort of thing. Tell you what, a good comment that you could make in this video below would be, where do you think we should visit in retirement? Tell us some places you visited. Give us some ideas. Where should we visit? I'd love to have your input, and we're going to see about going to some of these places. We've already, talked about, whether it's Thailand or some of the other, international spots. But what about in the United States? Where would you go in the United States? Where would you go internationally? Give us some ideas. We'd love to hear from you. So we're in the process of trying to get everything lined up so I can retire. And that's something that's kind of important to me. I want to retire, but I also want to make sure that I don't put us in a financial bind. So, there's always that. And I know that's a big conversation right now that a lot of people are having. How do we retire and not have, financial problems because we haven't planned for that, or they don't have as much in their savings as they need to. And I think back about my parents. They didn't have all that much, but they made it stretch, and they had to live off of what they had. And I think that's what you kind of have to do. I think you at some point you have to make that jump and say, okay, I'm gonna cut my expenses. I'm gonna watch my budget and be cognizant of what I'm getting and what's going out. And I have to make this work to live the way I want to live. Now, Beth and I have talked about the slow travel movement. Right? There are people who are our age who do slow travel, and I've actually got some videos on that about the slow travel. But basically, it's where people leave the country and go to places like Thailand or Japan, and they stay there they will stay in that country for 30 days or more, 30 to 60 days. and then they go to the next spot. And so they're kind of nomads per se. But the thing about it is the cost of living there is so much less than it is in the United States. They can exist off of basically what their Social Security income is, right? So there's a lot of people who are nomads, and then there are some people who are expats, and they go and they live in a country for years and become part of that country. I personally would probably prefer the nomad way of life. I don't know if you saw my other video or not, but we actually have had a lot of houses, so we're kind of nomads anyway, right? Don't tell anybody. Shh, just between you and me. But yeah, so I think we're already kind of nomads, but we have kind of settled down as we've gotten a little older. We're trying to stay in one spot in one house. Are we? Yeah, yes. we are. Yeah, I hear it from the background. Yes, we are. We're staying in one house. We've decided this is the one we're staying in, and this is it, right? And all of our friends would say, "Yeah, I've heard that before. So we'll see. But I do like the house, and I do like where I'm living now. So it makes a big difference. Anyway, I think I've rambled on enough for one day, but I wanted to talk about my experiences in the old Shandon neighborhood, and I'll talk more about that because there's actually a lot of kind of interesting vignettes of what life was like way back in the olden days of the 1960s, right? So I say that because I'm sure we have younger viewers who are watching and going, 1960s? Wow, you're old. Yes, I am. Anyway, so we're going to talk more about that later, but I appreciate you watching today. Please come back for more. Please share, like, and subscribe, and comment. And that's really what I want you to do, is to comment to the video below so that we can then become more of a community and I can put more things on that you want to see. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.